Hi guys, it's Eva and welcome to my middle grade March wrap up. So these are all the books I read for middle grade March here on BookTube. Some of the girls read middle grade books. I didn't do a wrap up at the end of March because honestly I read only like 2 of them, these 2. So I just thought, you know what, I'll just read the rest in April and do a wrap up then, because I don't really read middle grades throughout the year until March. Except for I always end up loving them and I really like them. I'm going to keep my favorite one for last. But yeah, I'm going to go through all the books. Okay, so the first book I read was the Group Pic, and I've never read the Group Pic actually like in March or April, and I ended up reading it in April this time, so I never read the Group Pic before, and I actually got around to reading it, and it took me about a day to read it. Not like a full day of reading, but yeah. The Book of Boy, I wasn't sure what it was about. I thought it was about the Middle Ages because of the knights and everything and the way that castles were set up, but it definitely was. It was set during the time, I think, right after the Black Plague, which is in the middle of the 1300s. But yeah, it's about a little boy and he goes on this like adventure that he kind of gets swindled into a little bit. He doesn't want to go on it. He's a little scared about a lot of things and you don't really know what's going on with the boy. You do know he's a hunchback. He's made fun of. People call him a monster. But he gets to see all these things and he gets to, yeah, he comes across knights and bandits. Animals always come to him. He has lived with goats his entire life. So yeah, he talks to dogs and geese and birds and everything, but it's a pretty surprising book. I didn't know what it was about at all, but it was a lot of fun. He does go on a bit of an adventure with this guy and he learns so much, and he learns that he needs to help people basically in the end. I think it's the moral of the story, but it's a really good book. It was a surprisingly good book. I didn't know where it was going for a long time, but I really liked it. There's a lot going on. He meets bandits. He goes to a place where a bunch of people are crippled like him and people don't look at him weird. And he meets monks and priests and just like all these things he's never really dealt with before. And then knights and nuns. He deals with nuns and ladies and liars and just an assortment range of people. And he goes all across France and into Italy. So yeah, I think there is a map at the very end, which usually there's a map at the beginning. But yeah, there's a map at the very end. So I think it shows everywhere they went to find these treasures. They're on a bit of a treasure hunt. Well, the first book I actually read in it was Jennifer A. Nielsen's Resistance. I read this because I found it on audiobook and I needed an audiobook and I was like, yes, I've been wanting to read that for years. This one was the most middle grade of the middle grade books I read. Or this one, I think children could definitely understand it. Maybe not be at the reading level, but they could listen to it. Unless they're an advanced reader, then they could read it. So this may be written at a middle grade level. It reminds me more of a children's book. This one more is middle grade. So this is about a girl who, just that, she joins the resistance. Her parents are in a death camp. She has the hair and looks of an Aryan, so she gets away with her false papers. And she goes on a very long adventure, and she's a Jewish girl in Poland, I believe. Yeah, in Nazi-occupied Poland. And she goes from city to city. It's high stakes. It's war. It's World War II. And I really liked it. I think it's definitely a fictional piece, but it was fun. It was a good middle grade World War II read. And yeah, I had a lot of fun with that one. Piece of Poetry by Jacqueline Woodson. This is Brown Girl Dreaming. You can see that it won a Newbery Honor Award, a National Award, and Peace, Nonviolence, Social Change, Brotherhood, Coretta Scott King Award, yeah. So it's won a bunch of awards. The poetry is lovely. This piece, like this one I listened to an audiobook and I sat down. This one I sat down like once during the day, but I read it all in a day. This one took me a few days, even though it's poetry. This was probably the fastest read. But it took me a while to read it because it's a lot to take in because of the poetry. So it's good to study the pieces, but there were pieces that were better than others. I thought it would all be about, like her dealing with discrimination when she was growing up, but it's not. It's a full life story. It's about everyone in her family and just all these things she remembered that she put together in poetry. And yeah, it's really lovely. It's like a whole kind of up until now life story, well, a big portion of it, and it was done really well. And this particular book has really extra ones, but poetry is always amazing me because I love how it reads. I just don't read enough of it, but this one is definitely at a child's level or middle grade level. They could definitely understand it. It's a really good book, a different way of studying discrimination in the 60s, I believe it was based. Yeah, the 1960s and 70s when she grew up. So that was like my discrimination challenge, I believe. This one was, like I said, the book that they chose. And then this one had nothing to do with the challenges. I just wanted to read this book. The next one I chose, it said like basically the main character has to be an animal. So I chose The One and Only Ivan because it is also a Newbery Honor Award. This one was the most children book of all the books I read. It reads very, very quickly, but I can see how it's written that it would be at a middle grade level writing, but children definitely could understand it. It's a lovely story about this giant gorilla or ape. Is he an ape? No, he's a gorilla. And this little elephant, and his best friend is a big elephant that lives next to him. They live in like cages at a mall, so they're not in a zoo setting. And the big elephant decides that the little elephant needs to grow up in a zoo setting, not in a cage. So it becomes the gorilla's kind of mission. And it's so sweet and so sad, but lovely story. The gorilla also has a human best friend, and it's a little girl who brings him pencils to draw with, and she sits there and draws with him all night because her dad is like the keeper, so he cleans everything at night and takes care of all the animals. And yeah, so his best friend is a human little girl and this big elephant, and it tells the story of the one and only Evan. And it's such a sweet, cute little story where it's definitely animal based, but nothing like Animal Farm, thank goodness. The next one I read was Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. This was actually the easiest, quickest, fastest read I read. Definitely the most childlike story I read. But yeah, this is by Roald Dahl. I picked this one because it met the illustrated challenges. I didn't honestly look at the illustrations too much because this book is one of the most, if not the most vivid out of all the stories I read. As far as like you can really see the factory in Willy Wonka. I read this one because I always heard that it was different from like the Willy Wonka story you're told in the movies, but it's like not at all to me. There's like little tiny discrepancies, but yeah, what you watch in the movies is what you get in the book. Make you hungry. It'll make you hungry for food. It's a very visual book. And then last, but my favorite book, so certainly not least, is 3 Times Lucky by Sheila Turnage, and this is also a Newbery Honor Award. This one was kind of like bent. This was like the one I wasn't going to go for, and I started listening to an audiobook because, again, I need an audiobook, and this was ready for checkout like right then, and I knew I had to read it for middle grade, or I wanted to read it for middle grade, and it turned out to be my favorite piece. This is about a spunky little girl, and it reminded me of Anna Green Gables in a way. She's kind of had nothing go right in her life a lot of the times, and she hasn't been given a lot in life, but she's very optimistic. She's very happy. She considers herself a detective. She writes to her upstream mother because she was found. She was orphaned. And this other lady and man take care of her. And so when a murder happens in town and kidnappings happen in town, she takes it upon herself to be a detective, even though it's a real detective who she definitely gets in the way of. But she also has a best friend who will do everything and anything for her. He's a wide wrong sider, but she's just like this like happy, upbeat person who thinks she can do everything, and it's a really lovely story to read. I really enjoyed it. Definitely middle grade here. And it was probably the most, where Charlie and the Chocolate Factory was really, really vivid as far as the scenes, and I could taste the chocolate and wanted to eat chocolate the whole time I was reading this. This one had like the most vivid characters. Like they really jumped off the page, as well as I could see the scenes of like this small town and these lakes and kind of backwoods area that the scenes are all set in. So yeah, this one had like the strongest characters and strongest scenes for me, and I love that in books. Absolutely love it. So can't recommend this one enough. I absolutely loved it, and those are all the books I read for middle grade March, and I always end up loving them all, and I did. I don't know why I don't read more throughout the year, but thank you for the girls who set it up as a challenge, and I'm glad I got stuck through it and read them all through April. And yeah, those are all the books I read, and I will see you guys in my next one. See you guys next time. Bye!